We are on page 10, so not a paragraph that begins there. And what introduced this paragraph was the principle we've discussed the principle of koiches and how nefesh influences the koiches. Daniel, you want to? Okay, thank you.
Quick question about this. When we said yesterday...
Let him introduce the topic first, then ask the question. There's a system.
I was wondering if Rabbi would be okay with me asking.
But no, let him introduce the shir so we get a sense of where we're coming up to. Can you remember your question?
Yes.
How the principle that the koiches are contained in the nefesh, which means two things. On the one hand, they are individual koiches. In that sense, they are limited and have a circumscribed definition. And then they are also sub-divisible into components. That's an inevitable result. At the same time, there is a nefesh spirit, nefesh influence that enables these koiches to function at their individual level. This is what we said, we learned before, the environment that the nefesh prepares. This is why in the hand there are different kind of koiches, in the head different kind of koiches, and in the foot a different kind of koiches. Yes?
Okay, I think we mentioned about there's a difference between pratim when it comes to tzinius and panemius, and I think we mentioned that at least one example of the difference was when a person eats like a human being, the way that they eat is the chitzonius, and the panemius is that they're eating like a human being. Just want to confirm, is that correct, or a little different than that, maybe? This pratim was a little complicated.
Well, we are not talking about how to eat. We're talking about the seichel, the human element that is manifest in everything that a person does. This is what we are focusing on. And we're saying that in everything there is a manifestation of the human element. And this is why we said that when a person eats, he does not eat because he's hungry, he eats because he wants to live. In other words, he already senses the neshama element. And there's much that we said in this regard. All right, so we're starting on the yours that begins on page 10. Vezeh-hu. And thus this is the meaning of the fact Ma shebekavon as ha-mitzvahs yeshis chalkus, that in the kavonis of the mitzvahs, kavonis of mitzvahs means that when a person does a mitzvah and he's fully involved, there is a kavona, there's an intent, a meaning of the mitzvah, an intent that he has in performing the mitzvah as to what is this mitzvah represent. All mitzvahs are all mitzvahs from neighbors, and primarily the intent of the mitzvah is to do what the Rebbe to fulfill the Rebbe's command. But then each mitzvah has its own significance and its own place. And therefore, in the individual kavanos and mitzvah, there is chalkus, there are differences. She'ein hakavona b'chol ha-mitzvahs b'shava, which means that the kavona is not equal in all the mitzvahs. Lefi, because she'atam, I'm sorry. Because she'atam be'hasoid she'b'chol mitzvah. The reason and the soid, the underlying principle in every mitzvah, einay b'shova b'kulam, is not equal in all of them. It's not in the same way. And that's why the kavanos and mitzvahs are different. But this that the Chazal say, that he must not settle down and weigh, judge the mitzvahs of the table. Because this would be a human tendency to judge this mitzvah is more important than this and than this one. So the Gemara says no. The kalish of the kalish, because the most seemingly insignificant mitzvah, the lightest of the mitzvah, v'chamurish of v'chamurish, and the most stringent, the most demanding of all mitzvahs, kulam shav. They're all equal, and this is why you must not judge their significance, because in fact they're all equal. And here we're saying no, that there is a difference between one mitzvah and another in terms of the kavanah of the mitzvah. So the explanation is vezeh-hu. This in that the Chazal say that there is not a difference is mitzad horotzin ho'elin shebemitzvahs. This is due to the rotzin that is contained in the mitzvahs, and that is expressed to the mitzvah. Rotzin ho'elin. Shehorotzin, where the rotzin einebo behagbola b'his chalkus, does not come in a finite manner, and does not have subdivisions, as we already discussed. Well, okay, and thus, kol ha-mitzvah shovin. This is why all the mitzvahs are exactly equal. We will revisit this line in a minute. Avol, but mitzad hatam v'hakavono, but from the perspective of the tam, the reason, the explanation, and the intent of the mitzvah, yesh bo vezeh-hu madrigas. Then there is different madrigas. In other words, again, we're coming to this principle. There is the rotzin, and then there is the vezeh-hu, the koyach. Mitzad the rotzin, there are no differences. Mitzad the vezeh-hu and the koyach involved in understanding and doing the mitzvah, there are differences. So to demonstrate the principle that mitzad harotzin, which not the hagbola, and there is no difference. We used the analogy of a house, of a room, to demonstrate the principle of harotzin. We explained that when you put up a house someplace on earth, the house demarcates an area, does not alter the area that it demarcates at all. Doesn't redefine the area. It is exactly the same area that was there before. And the experience of being in the house is essentially being someplace. Except that someplace, so there's, is demarcated. This demarcation is only for the purpose of you being able to relate to that reality. Because without demarcation, you're nowhere. But then, if you have a house, and in this house you have a table and you have a chair, both of these require a house. They have essentially completely different functions and of different level of importance, and they serve very differently. But in terms of their relationship to the house, they're identical. The room provides a reality, a significance, an ability to relate to a chair and to a table equally. Although when you start relating to them, they have completely different functions and different levels of importance. Like we explained yesterday, several days now, that we call this the human element. The human element is that which identifies the background reality that enables everything. A human being cannot sit nowhere. He can sit only within a designated area, within a meaningful environment. Like we gave the example of eating a 5-course meal in your own kitchen. The meal is exactly the same, but there's no way that it's going to give you that sensation of eating like you eat an arachasana. As a matter of fact, you'll feel like a fool. Serving it right. By arachasana, it makes perfect good sense. So we are definitely relating to it, but relating to it at a different level. We don't, without distinction, one thing or another. That's what he says. That there's the rotzen in the mitzvah, the rotzen ho'el in the mitzvahs. From that perspective, they're all representing the same thing, the same madriga. But when he talks about kavonas and mitzvahs, the individual identity and definition and what we're trying to accomplish with the mitzvah, there's a difference. Just like a chair and a table. A chair has a different function and a table has a different function. In terms of them both providing a human environment, service is identical. Neither one of them can be properly related to in the middle of nowhere, in a jungle. They all require the home environment to provide for them a base. This is the rotzen in mitzvahs, and then there is the kavonas on mitzvahs. Okay, we continue a little bit further. Ubichlolus, from giving a general overview, a general concept of these two principles, of the rotzin in the mitzvahs and the kavana and the tam of mitzvahs. In general, this is hu ha-hefresh. This is actually the distinction between Torah and mitzvahs, between Torah and mitzvahs. She'ha-Torah bo b'bchinas ischalkus. Well, the Torah is expressed in his chalkus, in subdivisions, sub-elements. Shekol inyonei ha-Torah, which means that all aspects of Torah, yesh b'hem chilukim, there are differences in all yom of Torah. There are differences in b'chinas oir ha-chochma shebahem, in the aspect and from the perspective of the oir ha-chochma that is expressed in these in the yonim of Torah. Which simply means that every svara, every Torah idea carries in it an oir ha-chochma. And they're all different. Every svara is different. It's different not only in content, but it's different also in importance, in significance, and so forth. The gam, and even Behatayno shebetoira, in the tainug that is contained and expressed in Torah, yesh vezeh-hu madreges. There are different madreges. Where is tainug come in here? Chochma, the underlying spirit of Chochma is oimek. Oinek and Rotzein are both a little bit of allow for misconception. When we talk about seichel, everybody knows, everybody understands that seichel is not my personal preference. Seichel is something that I reasoned out and I have, so to speak, a basis for, and sometimes the seichel convinces me and directs me to do other than what I would prefer to do. So seichel is not in conformity to my personal preference. And therefore, we say seichel, this is the truth. But then when we come to the higher level, talk about Oynig and Rotzen, we sort of lose sense. What is the significance of that? This seems to be dependent on a personal preference. This is what I want. That's very personal. This is what I delight in. It's even more personal. What is the significance of Oynig and Rotzen? So for 2 more moments to focus in on this. The principle in this is the reason that we are kind of misled by the term of Ayin and Ratzon. And we have this question as I presented it, is due to the fact that we perceive Ayin and Ratzon to be the result of a seichel. Rather than to be the authors of seichel. What does this mean? In our perception and worldly perception, this is absolutely not the truth that we are talking about. In our worldly perception, personal success, personal gain, personal recognition, strength, control. This seems to be a paramount, the primary human quest. In the world, this is what it is. There is even an interesting episode in Torah. Everybody heard of Rav ben Avot, right? Rav ben Avot, everybody heard of Rav ben Avot? Rav ben Avot was a very great man. And he swerved off the path. He became king, whatever it is. And the Gemara says that Hashem said to Yerovam that he should relent, should come back. And then, Ani ve'ato ben Yishai netai b'ganei. The three of us, I, Hashem, and Ben Yishai, and David HaMelech, and you, we will stroll in Gan Eden. So he asked, Mi berosh, who is going to be in the lead? So Hashem said to him, Ben Yishai berosh.
Oh.
So then he says, In hochel be. That's the case I don't want. I'm ready to forgo a stroll in Gan Eden with you and Ben Yishai if I'm not the berosh. It's an extremely significant story. A story that occurred someplace in the hidden crevices of reality. But unfortunately, this world confirms or conforms this story. Confirms the story. Seems to be a primary quest of human activity. Why? Because we perceive our own reality on the basis of what we perceive, what our seichel tells us. What gives us a sense of reality? Oh, I know this is my home, this is my friend, this is my this is my this. I feel comfortable with that which I identify with. So our own Ayin and Ratzon is actually a derivative of that environment that our seichel presents for us. Oh, it's my friend, it's my family, it's my home, it's my town. The seichel is at the periphery, so to speak, at the creation level of giving vent to all of, value to all of these things, so the entire environment. So Oinig and Rotzen not really Oinig and Rotzen. It's a fabricated Rotzen based on Seichel. The absolute truth is that we have a neshama, and this neshama relates only to the godly truth, more to Rishon, not to a Seichel reality. And the delight and the rotzen of the neshama is relating to that reality. The neshama knows a reality because the Eibishter provides it, not because its seichel identifies it. The Motzu Rishon, that is the reality for the neshama. Which, as we pointed out many times, seichel cannot even begin to understand this. What brings that reality down? Oinig and Rotzen. In Oinig, we can relate to the principle of Motzu Rishon, and in Rotzen, we can relate to the principle of Motzu Rishon. From there, we draw that inspiration and that oil into our seichel. And we say in seichel also, there is such thing as reality. Because the Oinig and Rotzen have substantiated, have identified with it. And to illustrate this phenomenon in a manner that we can actually understand it, is what we always present. That if you observe an area, we observe this room, you look around, you look from the window and you see everything that's in there. Inside you look around and see what's going on. This is the seichel element. But what gives substance to this seichel? What makes this whole observation real? It is not the observation of it. Like we said, you can observe and know everything that's going on, and you really appreciate what you see. It doesn't compare to identifying this reality when you step inside the room. When you're inside, there's not even a seichel thing. You're not an observer. You're part of this reality. This is Oinig and Rotzen. This is where I actually experience the greatness. You're actually a part of it. Because you are part of it, this is why you can thereafter translate it on the seichel level. Seichel is a derivative of Rotzen and Oinig. There are two parts in seichel. There is the conviction element, which is based on Rotzen. There is the delight element, which is based on Ayin. This is a real, true, a real rich svara. That's based on the Ayin. So what we're saying is that in Torah there are chilukim, in mitzvahs there are no chilukim. In Torah there are chilukim, because mitzvahs are based on Rotzen. In Torah there is both Rotzen and Oinig, but the Oinig in Torah that has chilukim because that ultimately comes down on the seichel element where you actually appreciate what you know. The appreciation what you know is different from one thing to the other. Therefore, in the Oinig itself also there are differences. Okay, now we have to interrupt till next, hopefully Tuesday.
Good trip.
Thank you very much. Have a great